Thank you, and thank you all for having me here today. And it was so nice to have such wonderful presentations before me. I feel very honored to follow all of you. Can you guys hear me okay? Fantastic. Well, all day long, we've really spoken about the power of communication, who we should be communicating to, why we should be communicating, when we should be doing it, where to do it, but we haven't really stopped and talked about what we should actually be communicating. So if your intentions are truly to have transparency with your family members, what does it look like and what does it involve? So over the next 40 minutes or so, or maybe 35, try and make it fast. I hope to educate you guys and just give you some good things to think about and some tools to take home and hopefully work on with your own families. And I apologize, I think I got a little carried away with all of the transitions in my presentation. So hopefully it doesn't make you dizzy. So I know there are a lot of varying degrees of what people have accomplished in this room. For those of you with a family office, you probably have most of this information already in place and in a good way. For others in the room, you may be hearing a lot of this information for the first time. Regardless of where you fall on the range, eventually, there'll be a time when our families are going to have to proceed forward without us here to really lead the way. So I know this isn't really an easy topic to think about, but it's critical that we really take time now to prepare, to communicate with our families, and to really truly leave a roadmap so that they can continue on and continue all of the great things that we've worked so hard to build upon in our whole lives. So what does this really mean? What does it look like, and where should we really start? When I think of information, I really like to break it up into two categories. When it comes to finances, our career, our families, our personal life, there's really qualitative information, the things that are important to you, your goals, your objectives, values, hopes, desires, expectations, intangibles. For instance, if you have a charity that you've supported for a number of years, a family foundation that you've set up, and you've really spent a lot of time working towards building this legacy and this organization, why is it important to you? If you're passing down money, assets to children, other members of your family, what is the money for? What do you hope for them to do with it? Any kinds of things that you hope to continue. It's very important to really take the time to have these discussions and document it. And then there's the quantitative information side of things. So all of your numbers, your assets, liabilities, business interests, insurance policies, etc. So I'm going to start by focusing on the qualitative side of things. Now, qualitative data can be a little bit, it's a little tough to see all this. It can be a little bit tricky to communicate. So unlike a bank account or insurance policy, there's not a statement to look at, there's not a policy summary. So how do we really communicate that data to our family? In my experiences, I found the best way to do this is through a video, or what I like to call a letter of intent. Other people may call this a letter of suggestion. There's a lot of different names out there for this. Essentially, this isn't really a legal document that you're going to need an attorney or somebody of that stature to actually go through and interpret from you. It's essentially just a simple letter intended to explain what you truly want, what your values, your desires are, and really coming from your own words. So in going about creating this letter of intent, really the idea is to explain to your children, to your family, why you've structured things the way that you have. So I know there's been a few conversations here that we've had and a few different examples discussing family situations where potentially one child may be receiving more than another child. One child may be receiving control of a business while other children aren't. Actually taking the time to write it down and to explain to your children why you've set things up the way that you have. Perhaps one child has a more limited earning potential than another child. Perhaps they chose a profession like teaching or had a philosophy degree as opposed to other children who may work in the corporate world. Perhaps one child is a single parent and has multiple children. Perhaps they were never married. So taking the time to actually sit down and explain to your children in the form of a letter, and whether or not you choose to share it with them ahead of time or leave this as something as a leave behind from when you're no longer here is truly critical in trying to avoid any kinds of conflicts or things ahead of time. Additionally, aside from trying to get away from conflict and being open and communicating with your children, any kind of values you want to pass on, legacies that you hope to continue, this is a great opportunity for you to be able to document that. Any kinds of special messages that you want to leave behind to your kids or family, desired funeral arrangements, wishes for pets, additional wishes, instructions, and information. Really explaining your actions and your wishes ahead of time can go a long way in keeping the peace among family members. I'd say I've been doing this for about 8 years now, and over my years, I've worked with a lot of different families, a lot of different situations. I've seen families who've done a great job preparing ahead of time. When there is a transition, both parents are no longer here anymore. Everything was very documented, communicated well to the family, and there was no friction. There was really the time for the family to be able to, do what they need to do, to be able to grieve, to be able to spend time with each other and not worrying about conflict. On the flip side, I've seen a lot of families who really haven't taken the time to prepare, and do these kinds of things. And there's been a lot of conflict that was created over a lot of unusual things at times. So I remember there was a family that I worked with that had 3 daughters. I'm actually one of 3 girls, so it was kind of similar to my family situation. And the mom was very big into collecting shoes and bags. So when mom and dad both passed away, all of the girls went in and swooped up all the shoes and bags, and there was just a very big argument over who got what bag, and one daughter was getting more bags than the other daughter. So I think really taking the time ahead of time to document that information can really go a truly long way in avoiding a lot of different conflict. Again, I got a little excited with all these transitions. So what does a letter of intent look like? I know it may be difficult to, just take away this information and sit down and write something. So I did provide a little bit of an example in here, just to give you some ideas to go through and work off. And really, there's no right or wrong way to do this. What truly matters is what comes from your heart, and that you're expressing your wishes and your desires and what's ultimately important to you. And just so you guys know, all of the slides are actually in the folders that are in front of you, so you're happy to take this, feel free to take this information home or follow along. So switching more to the quantitative side of things. So where do you all keep most of your most important documents? In a home computer? Filing cabinet? A safe deposit box? A shoebox? Maybe with another advisor, perhaps? How quickly could you locate your important papers if you needed to? If your documents are with if your documents are with an advisor, are they all with the same advisor, or are they spread out amongst multiple advisors? If they're not, and they are spread out, do you have the contact information for all these different advisors readily available? Does your spouse know about this? If they needed to access everything in a short manner of time, do you think they would be able to? What about the children in the room? Do you guys feel confident that if something were to happen to your parents, that you'd be able to know exactly who to call and when to call them? If you're not feeling super confident about this list, that's truly okay. I do want to take a quick moment to do an exercise here. So each of you has a pad of paper and a pen in front of you. In the next 30 seconds or so, I'd like you to just take a moment and see if you can think of exactly where your will, your estate documents, your insurance policies, and any business arrangements are. Now, I know this is sensitive information, so you don't necessarily have to write down exactly where each of these documents are, but just take a few seconds and see if you guys actually know where these documents are. Now, how many of you guys feel pretty confident as you're writing this list, where you know everything is? That's excellent. I'm very impressed to hear all that. And how many of you guys not so much? Wow. Very impressive. Great crowd. Well, even though I'm in the business of doing financial planning and doing these things myself, I'm not always the best at taking care of my own things. So if you are like me and you're a little bit shy to speak up, that's okay. Think about your assets and liabilities now. How many of you guys feel like you have a pretty good idea of everything that you own, where it's located, and how it's titled? Still a pretty good amount of people, very impressive. Well, again, if you're not feeling so great about this topic or you're a little bit shy to speak up, my goal is really to provide you with the tools to hopefully address these things sooner rather than later. So why is this really important? Why should we truly care about this? If you're like me, and I think we all share pretty similar core values, we care about this because we want to see our children and future generations succeed. We want to be able to see our children grow and continue the legacies that we've either created or inherited and been the steward over. Because we want to pass down our values. Because tomorrow isn't guaranteed. Because by age 80, half of all people suffer some sort of cognitive impairment. And unfortunately, one of the first areas to go is often finances. And something that I actually found that was pretty shocking was, according to the National Association of Unclaimed Property Administrators, state treasurers currently hold almost $33 billion in unclaimed bank accounts and other assets. So things like insurance policies, bank accounts, holdings in equity that people just weren't aware of that are actually still sitting out there because families didn't communicate properly to their children and future generations about what assets they actually had. Furthermore, you could put your family in a very difficult position, forcing them to make difficult decisions about health, about finances, and about their future at an emotional time without being aware of what your intentions are. I've worked with numerous families over the years that have wasted endless amounts of times. There's one family actually I can remember in particular where it took almost 3 years for the family to go through and to be able to locate and document where everything was, how it was owned, and to make sure that we weren't missing anything. Cost thousands and thousands of dollars, attorneys got involved, there's a lot of conflict among siblings, seen lots of different things, over the years that haven't really been super positive experiences. Sorry. And on the flip side, I've also worked with numerous families where we've spent time gone through everything, documented where assets are, gone through their estate plan, discussed who's getting what the assets are, what the liabilities are. And it's amazing just to see the difference between the two situations and cases. So, the way I think about these things is if we had the opportunity to be able to do something now to avoid conflict, why wouldn't we do that? So where should we really begin? So I know a lot of this can seem really overwhelming for some people, although most people in the room seem to have a pretty good handle on things, which is excellent. So whether you do have a great handle on this, and this is a refresher again, that's fantastic. Take this information and pass it on to other members of your family, to friends, to colleagues. And again, if you're in the crowd where you feel like you need a little sprucing up here, this is a great place for you to really start. So generally, I sit down with people and do an inventory to ensure that they have everything. And if they don't, we really take note of what they don't have. As you begin going through your documents, it's important to make note of anything that's over 10 years old and any documents that are missing. Everything that you do have, arrange in a way that you could potentially leave for someone where it's somewhat self-explanatory, and then store these documents in a centralized and secure location. So a good place to actually store things, maybe it's a safe deposit box, maybe it's an encrypted computer, maybe it's a safe in your house. I wouldn't recommend just leaving it, on your kitchen counter or anything of that nature. But make sure that you do find a place and then actually make sure that you communicate about it. Once you do have everything in a centralized, secure location, it's important to set up a plan to reach out to the advisors that perhaps have data that you don't have, or perhaps to review and update things again that are over 10 years old. Once you get all these completed, make sure to store everything in a safe, secure location, and then really take an opportunity and draft a letter of intent as we discussed before. And all of this information is truly fantastic, but unless you're actually communicating about it and sharing it with somebody, it's really meaningless. So as you go through and do this, it's really important to make sure that you tell a spouse, tell a child, tell a trusted family member or friend so that they're aware of everything that you're doing. So what documents do you really need? So in each of your folders, you're gonna see something called your asset, or to me, in financial inventory. So feel free to pull this out and follow along. Again, while we all may have knowledge about everything that is going on in our lives and all of the different facets and assets and liabilities, it could be extremely difficult for somebody else to step in and gather all of these facts. So throughout the course of our lives, we really all accumulate a growing list of accounts, liabilities, legal documents, professional contacts, and digital assets. Over time, it's really easy for this data to become spread out amongst different locations. I truly believe, and I know we as a firm truly believe, in having everything in one centralized location. There's really no one-size-fits-all for this task. This is truly meant to be a guide. It's not all-encompassing. Again, for those of you who have a family office, who have a greater degree of things in place, this may not really be all that helpful to you at all. For other people, this may have 85 to 90% of the things that you need to be thinking about. So again, it's really meant to serve as a guide of information to begin collecting. You can choose to fill this out or just use it to make sure that you're organized. And I really encourage you as we go through this to again pull it out and follow along. So the first section is really going to be a summary of personal information. So again, legal name, legal address, date of birth, social security numbers, your employer, address, phone numbers. When something happens to us and we're no longer here, all this information is truly critical. So we're going to need this to contact employers to let them know what happened. We're going to need this information to apply for benefits, to get life insurance proceeds, to transfer accounts over. So really beginning with a summary of your personal information and then going through your critical contacts. So I'd say contact number one, aside from your powers of attorney for healthcare and property, is going to be your executor. So making sure to document who that person is and entering in their contact information is a big piece. Flipping through the next page, your professional contacts. So advisors that you work with on a regular basis who are key keepers of critical information. So your estate planning attorney, accountant, insurance agents, property and casualty agents, investment advisors, personal bankers. Then going through and taking kind of a summary of what you have in terms of estate documents. So making sure that you're aware of, do I have a living will? What are my actual wishes? Where is it located? My will, any trusts that have been created, powers of attorney for property and healthcare, and other documents. And nowadays, everything has gone digital, and a lot of hospitals and health systems are very accommodating to that. So many hospitals actually, if you're going in for a big surgery, or even if you just know that you're very, involved with a certain hospital system, you can actually send them digital copies of your powers of attorney for health and property and your living will, so that information is already on hand, which is fantastic. Moving down from there, really just summarizing who the trustees are and making sure that the contact information is readily available. Going through a list of all assets and liabilities. Now I know there's a section here that says fair market value, and not everybody may be comfortable sharing that information today. This really isn't about sharing numbers per se. It's about documenting where everything is and really creating a roadmap so that people can go back and retrace your steps and be able to see where everything is. So even simply writing down, I have various assets at this institution, various assets at, X institution, Y institution. I have these things through my employer. I have pensions through previous employers. Really writing down what those accounts are and where they're currently held is critical. Then going through and talking about business information. I think I'm falling a little behind here. So business information is pretty huge, especially if you have a smaller family-owned business. So identifying contact information for key partners and employees, contact information for any people who are aware of accounts or have control of accounts within the companies, identifying partnership agreements, operating agreements, buy-sell agreements, and if they're funded with insurance policies, where those documents actually are, and then a location of important business paperwork as well as your desires on what you hope to have happen with the business. Continuing on, getting into real assets outside of liquid assets and business assets. So going through and writing a list of all of the various properties that are owned, obtaining documents related to those properties, mortgages, deeds, things of that nature, which are going to be important if we have to transfer title of any of these things. Insurance policies, so making sure that we're identifying not only life insurance, but any long-term care insurance, again, property and casualty, so talking about homeowners, auto insurance, umbrella insurance, things of that nature, and really identifying not only what the policies are and where they're kept, but what the policy numbers are is pretty critical as well. Tax returns, so making sure that you've identified where recent tax returns are. If they're with your accountant, write that down, let people know. If you know that you're storing them in a particular area, make sure that you write that down as well. Social Security and Medicare records, veterans benefits, again, if there's a safe deposit box or a safe, making sure that you're communicating that so people are aware. Car titles, and then digital assets. So I want to stop and kind of pause and take a breath here because we really live in a digital society and just about everything is digitized these days. How many people in this room use Facebook? What about LinkedIn? What about email? Just about everybody. So, and how many of you are able to keep track of all your usernames and passwords? Feel comfortable that you could recall every one of them? It's a test. If you had to on demand, yes.
There's an app for that.
Oh, what app do you use?
Safe ID.
Safe ID, okay. Yeah, there's actually a lot of good programs out there, which if you're interested in learning more, you can come talk to me after, and I'd be happy to share some information on that. But making a list, and again, storing it in a safe place is pretty critical. But just of all of your usernames, all your passwords, all the sites that you frequent, making sure that you're writing down a list of what computers you have information on, who has access to each of these computers, what type of documents are on there. If these computers are safe to be, at some point destroyed, or what you should really have done with them. And this is truly really important too because identity theft is pretty huge. So again, just being aware of everything and making sure that you have all this information and that's in a centralized place is pretty huge. And I also want to say having usernames or codes to get into cell phones, to get into iPads, to get in things of that nature is pretty huge too, to be able to document and leave it down. And then additionally, if you know that there's a computer that has, numerous family photos or things of that nature, identifying that and really letting your family know where it is critical. Additional things to document and keep your eye on. A list of creditors and liabilities. So again, people can call various companies, change over the names of utilities, cancel credit cards, or keep credit cards and making sure that you're obtaining airline miles, things of that nature. Birth certificates, marriage certificates, divorce records, passports, driver's licenses, any miscellaneous numbers, and then just a list of family heirlooms. So next steps, what should you really do next? The first thing is, which hopefully most of you don't have this problem, is really not to panic. Organize what you do have. Pardon me? It's too late. Hopefully it's not too late. So by thinking about these things today and identifying them is, the first step of the practice. But really organizing what you do have and then making a list of the documents that you need to update, the documents that you don't have, the advisors that you need to contact. Take what you have and store them in a safe, secure location. Make sure that you keep everything centralized and in one location. And then really make a plan what to do next. Who's going to be responsible for reaching out to what advisors, exactly what documents you're looking to obtain and what you need. And then when you do get those back, again, storing them and then communicating about it. So really the message of today has really been about the power of communication. So be sure as you're going through and doing all this to talk about it with your family members and to share this information. It's ultimately up to you about how much information you want to share. I'd say, this is really think of completing something like this as a gift to your children and to your family. So taking the time to properly document and lay out where everything is truly a gift and can help a lot in the next areas of life. And a few things to be aware of. I think there may be another handout in the folder that just kind of walks through, so what actually happens or needs to happen when somebody passes away. So this document kind of outlines the steps the family would have to take over the first 30, 60, 90, 100 days, an entire year. So really going through this and flipping through, you'll understand why having all this information is so critical. But documents that you would really need right off the bat are going to be your living will, powers of attorney, healthcare proxy, letter of instruction, funeral arrangements, care for dependent children, a source of immediate cash, important contacts, and then employment information, again, to notify everybody and to let them know what's going on. Also, if you're not actively working, any places that you volunteer at, any organizations that you're a part of, it's a good idea to document that information so that your family can let them know. So key takeaways from today, kind of summing everything up quickly. Start where you can. This is a really good guide. The asset and financial inventory. Again, it's not going to be a cover-all, but it's meant to facilitate a lot of conversations and get you thinking in the right way. How you choose to document this information is up to you. Personally, I think a letter of intent and completing something like this is a great exercise. I do also encourage all of you to not be afraid to speak with your family ahead of time and to have conversations as you're going through this. Perhaps this could be a family exercise or something that you encourage your children to start filling out as they move into their 30s, 40s, and 50s, so they're aware of all of their information and moving parts. Organization is key. Again, if we're not here to explain to somebody how things work or the order of things or where things are, it's important that we really have everything organized in a way that's pretty self-explanatory. Address your documents that are missing and make a plan to complete them. And then communicate. And that's pretty much just a quick overview. I wanted to leave you guys again with, I know most of you have everything in a very good place, but just to go through and think about the kinds of things that are important and that people are really going to require to continue to move forward in life if we're no longer here. So are there any questions or any particular information? I know I wanted to kind of run through this quickly because Anna is going to have a quick Q&A. I think. So, nope. All right, well, thank you guys.